Hello and welcome to the second video in the GRE Quantitative Fundamental series. In this video, we're going to be going over order of operations, which is a relatively fundamental concept and one that I think most people are familiar with. So this video is going to be a bit shorter. We're just going to review the basics and take a look at some practice problems and put it to use. Just know that going forward, order of operations is crucial for all areas of arithmetic, algebra, and beyond. Early on in your math education, you were probably taught some sort of acronym or clever way to remember order of operations. In the United States, a lot of kids grow up learning PEMDAS, or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, which in this case refers to the P for parentheses, the E for exponents, the M and D refer to multiplication and division, and just so that everybody's aware, it's not that multiplication comes before division. Uh, that is one step and you proceed left to right, doing all the multiplication and division, and the same thing is true for the addition and subtraction. If you were taught something else, it's all the same. A lot of international students I've worked with grew up with BEDMAS, B-E-D, where brackets stands in for parentheses. It's all the same thing. To begin with, we'll start with this question here, and just like with all other problems in this video and any other video in the series, just go ahead and pause it and take the question on your own before continuing on. So in this case, we have a question that's pretty deliberate in terms of testing order of operations. There's really not much going on here besides basic arithmetic. It's just making sure that you do everything in the right order. Sometimes when I'm working with students and they see questions like this, they wonder, is something like this really going to be on the test? Will a question be this easy? And the answer is yes. Um, on your first section, you might see a smattering of what you might consider relatively easy arithmetic questions. However, if you're getting questions like this later in the test on the second, or if you're given the mock section in quant the third, you might be a little concerned that you've not done well and are now on a very easy section. So to go about solving this question, the first thing we want to do is apply PEMDAS and think, well, are there any parentheses? And the answer is yes, obviously. We have two sets of parentheses here, and so the first thing we're going to do is resolve everything inside each of those sets of parentheses. So the first set of parentheses, 12 minus 11 minus 10 minus 9, we now, within the parentheses, need to think, well, how do we use order of operations? Well, in this case, it's all subtraction, and so we're just going to proceed left to right. Now, we could go ahead and plug this into a calculator, which wouldn't be a terrible idea, but we can go ahead and do this one by hand. So if we have 12 minus 11, it's going to give us 1. So then we take the 1, and now we subtract the 10. We end up with negative 9. Then we take the negative 9, we subtract the 9, and we end up at negative 18. We can then go ahead and do the same thing on the right side with the other set of parentheses. So 18 minus 17 is 1. 1 minus 16 is negative 15. Negative 15 minus 15 is negative 30. So at this point, if we were to rewrite our equation, it would look something like negative 18 as the first set of parentheses minus negative 30 in the second set of parentheses. And so subtracting a negative will result in adding 30. So it'll be negative 18 plus 30, which comes out to positive 12. And in this case, we're dealing with a numeric entry question, so we would just type that into the box, and that would be our answer. Here we have another numeric entry question, except in this case it's a fraction, and we are going to be needing to use every step of PEMDAS, as it were. So if you were able to work through this, the process should have looked something like this. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look at the parentheses. In this case, the set on the outside, so the brackets. And then when you look inside, you're going to need to start again and apply PEMDAS again. So when looking inside the parentheses, we're going to think, well, is there parentheses inside the parentheses? And there is. And so that's the first thing we'll do. The 15 plus 7 will become 22. The next thing we're looking for is exponents inside, and there is one, 2 to the third, so that becomes 8. Next, we're looking for multiplication and division, and there's one multiplication step, 4 times 8, which is 32. And then we're looking for addition or subtraction, 32 minus 22, which just gives us 10. So now we can go to the very outside and say the correct answer must be 34 divided by 10. So we would put in 34 over 10. Now, some of you might have reduced it down to 17 over 5, which is also fine. If you'd put that in, that'd be the correct answer. Generally, I recommend to my students that you not reduce fractions when you're given the opportunity to in numeric entry, because there's no benefit to it and you just increase the chance that you might end up making some sort of silly mistake in your reduction, and if nothing else, you're just spending more time. The test will accept any fraction that is equivalent to the correct fraction, so we could have even put in something like 3400 over 1000 and it still would have accepted it as a correct answer. So for this next one, again, same thing, just following order of operations, following PEMDAS. It's a little trickier, it looks a little bit more like a standard GRE question of kind of middling difficulty. So if you were able to get this one, the process looked probably something like this. First thing you did was do the parentheses. So 1 minus a half is just a half. 1 minus a third is 2/3. So parentheses step is done. Next up is exponents. So when you raise a fraction to an exponent, without going too in depth here, you essentially just raise the numerator to that exponent and the denominator to that exponent. So in this case, 1/2 squared would just be 1/4, and 2/3 squared would just be 4/9. And then when multiplying fractions, you just multiply across, numerators multiply together, denominators together, and in this case, if you're familiar with rules of fractions, you know that the 4's will just cancel, and all you'll be left with is 1/9, and that'll be D. For a last question, I tried to find something that wasn't going to be too involved in terms of concepts we haven't covered yet, but if you've been working at the GRE, this probably looks familiar. The GRE likes to ask these symbol questions, which are essentially just function questions. So in this case, for all integers x and y, let x club y be defined as follows. And so all we're being asked to do is, when we see the symbol club, we look for the integer that's before and the integer after, and we just put them into their respective places in what follows. In this case, the negative absolute value of x plus y. So to start, at a glance, quantity A is just 4 minus 6, which is -2. Quantity B is going to be the trickier one, and that's probably where we're going to have to do most of the work. So in this case, we have 4 club -6. So if we put that into the symbol function that they've given us, it's going to look like the absolute value, or the negative absolute value of 4 plus -6. In order of operations, absolute value is in the same step as parentheses. So what we have to do is evaluate everything inside the absolute value first. So in this case, 4 plus -6 is just -2. So we would rewrite this like so. The absolute value of -2 is just +2, so this will look like negative the quantity +2, and once you apply the negative, you're just left with -2. And so in this case, quantity B is -2, quantity A is -2, and we would answer C. So that's it for order of operations. For some of you, I know that nothing in there was new. For others of you, if anything in there didn't sit well, that you're not feeling confident with the rules of PEMDAS, order of operations, make sure that you go and find some other resources. Do some sort of basic arithmetic practice just to be sure that you've got this down, because starting from here, if this isn't solid, everything else from here on out is going to be shaky. So thanks for watching this video, and I hope you join me for the next one.